Welcome back, everyone, to the P&L IRL podcast. This is your host, Luke, and with me, as always, my co-host, Pat.
Hello, everybody.
Stumbling through that intro, just like the Titans are struggling and stumbling against the Miami Dolphins. But we'll talk about all that NFL news and many other things ahead. We got a jam-packed week this week. Lots of good stuff for you, as well as our main topic, DLC. We want to get to the NFL. We want to talk about the NBA Hall of Fame inductees. But let's start with what's been going on new in our own realms. So for me and my wife have been celebrating our first anniversary. This weekend we did a lot together. We went to some nice restaurants, spent some time together, which was very, very nice. Exchanged some gifts. Very, very nice gifts as well.
Congratulations.
Yes, we made it through a full year. She has put up with me for a full year. Many more before that, obviously, but when we were dating, but a full year of marriage, so we are happy to have achieved that. Also, I've just been working my tail off and working on podcasting ideas. We visited a local historic homestead, which was only open one day a year. I'm not sure why they do it that way, but it's very interesting to see. And lots of other fun stuff going on, rearranging the office. Actually, I have a new podcast set up as we are recording this, so lots of good stuff going on there for me. Pat, what's been new for you?
It was a good week, a busy week. I made my first visit to our new offices in New York. So met with some of the team, met with some outside people, software companies that we're looking at working with. So that was good. We had a good time that evening, dinner and bar and drinks, and it was a good time. We had a lot of plans this weekend that were canceled due to all the rain here in Indy. We've gotten just nonstop rain for like 3 days. Mm-hmm. So the NASCAR race was canceled. We were going to a concert that was the day before the race. That got canceled.
Ooh.
So we ended up just kind of hanging out, trying to stay dry.
Now, was that from the hurricane that was like, it like made its way up? Is that what I understood? Like it was just a bunch of rain from
that? So it's not been bad weather. It's just been nonstop rain.
Yeah, I heard it. My grandparents told me it was raining for like 48 hours up there. I said, man, that's a lot. And so while you all dealt with the remnants of that hurricane, we've got Hurricane, I don't even remember the name of it now, Hurricane Florence coming this way, and people are kind of freaking out in the Carolinas, grabbing their water. Obviously, for me, I would encourage anybody on the coast, the East Coast, to hunker down. Where I live is a little bit farther inland, so we're not as concerned, but I think people are still taking precautions.
Always better to play it safe.
Yeah, I think so. So let's jump right on into some news. First off, some sad news out of the entertainment world. The death of Burt Reynolds. Number one, I didn't realize Burt Reynolds was as old as he was. He was in his 80s. And then the death of Mac Miller, who was not old. He was very young. He was 26 years old. Mac Miller, a rapper. The death of both of those two people. Burt Reynolds, famous for roles like Smokey the Bandit. Mac Miller, obviously a very young and upcoming rapper in the music world. So, Pat, any thoughts on the death of those two entertainers?
I mean, I was mostly unaware of Mac Miller until he died, so it wasn't devastating to me in any way. And my favorite memories of Burt Reynolds are the jokes on him in Saturday Night Live.
Oh, they were great.
I loved Norm Macdonald playing Burt Reynolds in Celebrity Jeopardy. Fantastic. That's what I think of when I think of Burt Reynolds, and it is definitely a sad loss. I didn't realize he was as old as he was either.
Right. Yeah, he definitely lived a good life. And Mac Miller had been rapping for a little bit. He had actually played a concert at Indiana University at one point, and then a couple other things. But obviously you never want to hear about the loss of two individuals. Right. Very sad there in the entertainment world. But transitioning out of the entertainment world and moving into the NBA, we have the 2018 Hall of Fame inductees. And the 2018 Hall of Fame inductees include Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Ray Allen, Grant Hill. So a lot of shooters in that. Along with the Philadelphia 76ers great Maurice Cheeks, WNBA legend Tina Thompson, and a European player as well. This is from BleacherReport.com. So we have quite the few Basketball Hall of Fame inductees in 2018, 13 members, and they held a ceremony in Springfield, Massachusetts for the Basketball Hall of Fame. Thoughts on those players, Pat? I know I can just think of Ray Allen. Obviously, Ray Allen, huge with that shot for the Heat. With that game tying 3-pointer where the Heat fans were all leaving the stadium. They thought it was over. They thought San Antonio had won it. And then all of a sudden Ray Allen hits that corner three. Place goes nuts. People try to get back in. It was crazy. Ray Allen, one of the all-time greats. There, I think Steve Nash just being one of the greatest point guards, one of the greatest passers in the game. Jason Kidd, obviously now a head coach in the NBA. Any thoughts on those inductees there, Pat?
I mean, congratulations to them all. I didn't watch any of the speeches or anything. I may check them out later, but I hope Ray Allen and anyone else who gets inducted to the Hall of Fame pretty early after their career is over is really, really humbled by that. I mean, that says a lot. There's a lot of people who try year after year after year to get into the Hall of Fame, and Ray Allen has not been retired for more than a few years.
Yeah.
So I hope he is very, very humbled to know that he was that good that they're not going to make him wait that long. And you're right, he had some incredible moments, but I mean, he's in the top tier when it comes to 3 points made, attempted, percentage. I mean, that guy could shoot. Grant Hill, I remember him when I was younger, so that's exciting to see him. I like this time in my life, I'm starting to understand and know all of the people who get inducted into the Hall of Fames.
Yeah.
Which is kind of exciting. So when you're young and people get in, you're like, I don't know who that is, and your dad has to tell you, or your mom, or whoever. But now, I know these people, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And again, congratulations to all of those inductees, and we will link a link to that Bleacher Report article if you'd like to read more about those. And it actually shares parts of the speeches, which are quite good. So those are the NBA Hall of Fame inductees in 2018. Let's move into college football, where we've had essentially no surprises, bar two big ones. Let's talk about one that is not a surprise, but one that also not many people care about. Eastern Michigan beats Purdue in the Boilermakers home opener. And all I put in the comments for this was, ha ha, Pat, you and I are both Hoosiers, so we love seeing Purdue lose to a small school like this.
And now they're 0-2.
So
they're off to a tough start.
Yes, very, very tough. And it was heartbreaking the way they lost. I wrote this down in our notes. It said Purdue missed a field goal. They would have been up 5, pretty much game iced, right? Eastern Michigan would have to score a touchdown to win. But Eastern Michigan drives right back down the field. Purdue's only up 2. Eastern Michigan drives right back down the field. They hit the field goal and just put a dagger in Purdue in West Lafayette. To me, that's just terrible. And it was even worse because Purdue had essentially stopped Eastern Michigan. They had stopped them. They had sacked the quarterback, but then they got a personal foul for pushing the quarterback down after the play was over. Now, it's kind of a controversial call. I didn't think it was that bad. I don't know that it merited a penalty, but the simple fact is the referees are being told that this is, they're really cracking down on those personal fouls and those unsportsmanlike conducts. Gave Eastern Michigan 15 yards, gave them a free shot at the field goal, and next thing you know, Eastern Michigan runs off the field with the victory, and that's huge. And like you said, puts the Boilermakers at 0-2, while the Hoosiers go to 2-0 after beating Virginia in an equally sloppy game that Indiana almost gave away on the final drive.
No, it's a great start for being an IU fan,
yes.
For sure.
2-0.
But college football has been interesting. So Kentucky beat Florida.
Yes.
That's a big deal, and I believe, am I right? I saw one of the Florida players transferred already.
Something like that I've heard. I know that it was, it was a huge deal, and Florida and SEC football is obviously big. That's a ranked Florida team. It was the first time in 30 some odd years that Kentucky had beaten Florida, so that's a huge victory for the Wildcats. But yeah, if that is accurate, I mean, I wouldn't be stunned if you're a team like that at Florida and you have hopes for, maybe not a college football playoff spot, maybe not that top 4 team, but if you have hope for a solid bowl game, well, all of a sudden you may find yourself on the outside looking in.
Yep, we'll see how the rest of the season goes, but college football is non-stop excitement, in my opinion.
Love it. And we also have the pros back this week. We're recording this a little late on Sunday night, so we've seen a lot of the games this week. Pat, let's just do a quick rundown of a few of them. We've got the Buccaneers in an absolute shootout with the Saints, 48-40. Ryan Fitzpatrick leads the Buccaneers to a victory over Drew Brees and the Saints in New Orleans. Any thoughts on that game?
I mean, two thoughts. One, Ryan Fitzpatrick killed it.
Yeah, he did.
If you had any Tampa Bay offensive player in fantasy football, you had a good week.
Yes.
I, fortunately, had Alvin Kamara.
Right.
So I also had a great week. So I'm up 43 points in our league with one player. So that is a shootout. And Drew Brees is always interested in a shootout. And, man, is he the best at it.
What makes that really interesting to me is I was looking at the stat line for Alvin Kamara. 8 carries for 29 yards, 2 touchdowns. Okay, so he's got 2 touchdowns, only 29 yards, though. Then you look at his receiving, 9 receptions, 121 yards, and a touchdown for a receiver. Or, I'm sorry, 112 yards. For a running back, that to me is crazy. But that game was a huge shootout. We also have the Patriots beating the Texans 27-20 in Foxborough. The Steelers and the Browns 21-21 in a tie. Pat, that's the first time we've seen a tie in a while in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, to me, I don't like it. It's an interesting way to end a game, and to me, it feels weird. So even when I told my wife that they had tied, she's like, how? Why do you tie? I'm like, well, they changed the rules, so you get one overtime. If nothing happens, it's a tie. But I think the most interesting part out of this game is, number one, Cleveland still hasn't won a game since 2016.
Right.
Okay. It's not great.
So close. So close. One blocked field goal away.
One blocked field goal away.
So close.
And Le'Veon Bell did not play. He's holding out for the big contract, and guess what? Le'Veon Bell's not necessary. James Conner, 31 rushes for 135 yards,
yes,
2 touchdowns. He caught 5 passes for another 57 yards.
Yes.
I mean, the dude killed it. Le'Veon, you're not important like you think you are. The Pittsburgh Steelers are made to run the ball. It doesn't matter who they give it to, evidently.
Hey, throwing some shade at Le'Veon. Le'Veon did actually tweet after the game. He tweeted like the little emoji with the monocle, like the wow, it's like, what am I seeing here? You're right. Connor had a huge game. What amazes me is that Pittsburgh had 5 turnovers and still almost won that game. Big Ben threw 3 picks and had 2 fumbles. I know this because I had him on almost like 2 or 3 of my fantasy teams, and that killed me. I'm like, how do you do that, Ben? I know the Browns' defense is good, but clearly they're much improved to hold Big Ben the way they did. Wow.
A couple more comments on that game.
Yeah.
One, Le'Veon Bell is a great player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, okay.
But in this day and age, there's no one single person that is as crucial, especially at the running back position.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I agree with his strategy.
Yeah.
And 2, I remember last year, Ben Roethlisberger had a 5-interception game.
He did.
He was all pouty in the locker room. He's like, I might as well retire. I don't know. Just winding up a storm. It's going to be interesting what comes over the next week or so because he started out with 3 interceptions.
Oh, my gosh.
So maybe there's some merit to his whining. I don't know.
It was a tough game for Big Ben up there, and it was raining the whole time I watched the game. I'll tell you what, Ben, that was a game that I did not expect to have me. I got 2 games down here on local television. I got the Saints and the Buccaneers, and I got the Steelers and Browns, and man, were those doozies. I was on the edge of my seat for both of those games, like yelling at my TV, and I don't even have a horse in the race. And it was amazing those 2 games were. And I tell you what, that was something. We also have the Chiefs and the Chargers. The Chiefs beating the Chargers in Los Angeles 38-28, and Pat Mahomes showing off with 256 yards and 4 touchdowns. Pat Mahomes, who I doubted to the point of no return. Is he for real, or is the Chargers defense not as good as we thought it was?
I think that Kansas City's offense is it's a solid offense. So they just need someone who can execute the plays as Andy Reid draws them up. So every quarter, they'll have a strong run game, which they didn't have so much of one today, 16 times, and other players ran the ball a few times too. So they still were running it. Tyreek Hill Now that's a man right there.
Mm-hmm.
He had a punt return for a touchdown.
Whew.
He had 7 receptions for 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I think that offense, especially with some of the key players like Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce,
Mm-hmm.
they're just set up to do well. So Pat Mahomes may not be a Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't know, but as long as he can do what Andy Reid tells him to do, they're going to have some success. And I don't know enough about the Chargers defense. I didn't watch, but I mean, they just got lit up.
Hey, Alex Smith, who am I right? So, we also had in other final scores, we had Seattle and Denver. Denver edging out the Seahawks 27-24. Case Keenum throws for 3 touchdowns and 3 picks for the Broncos, I believe that's right, Case Keenum. Russell Wilson throwing for 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Kind of a back-and-forth game there. Good game. The Panthers edging out the Cowboys 16-8 in Carolina. Cam Newton with a big touchdown there. Cam had a pretty good week. And the Redskins 24-6 over the Cardinals. Adrian Peterson scores a touchdown in a Redskins uniform. That's not something we expected to see today.
All day.
All day. AP Alex Smith goes for 255 and 2 touchdowns as well. AP almost hitting the century mark, 96 yards and a touchdown. And meanwhile, the Cardinals, man, just struggling. Sam Bradford couldn't find it. Johnson, who just got paid, by the way, not finding it. 37 yards today and a touchdown. So a bit of a struggle there for the Cardinals. And then, oddly enough, we have a game that's still in...
That Washington Redskins game, and that was Adrian Peterson's 100th touchdown run.
Yes, we should definitely say 100 touchdown run. That puts him right up there in some of the top in the league in terms of 100 rushing touchdowns. They said it in the game. I didn't get who else he was up there with, but quite the achievement for Adrian Peterson there. And then just 2 more games to talk about. We didn't talk about the Thursday night football game because it was so terribly bad. The Eagles beat the Falcons in what was just a snore fest. They won 18-12. I turned that game off at halftime and went to bed because that game was boring, as opposed to the games today, which were exceptional. We missed that game. We missed the game that is still ongoing. The Dolphins and the Titans, they have been rain delayed several times. That game interesting because the Titans have lost 2 key players to injury. Left tackle Taylor Lewan and quarterback Marcus Mariota to an elbow injury. So both of those big pieces to the Titans offense ruled out essentially for the rest of this game. And it looks like with about 1:15 left, Miami's going to wrap that one up against Tennessee with a victory 27-17, the current score. But it looks like Tennessee struggling down in some rough weather in Miami. And then last but certainly not least, we have to talk about your team. And I guess because we hit on Minnesota and San Francisco. Did we hit that game? It was 24-16 Minnesota victors. We have to hit on the Colts and Andrew Luck's return. Andrew Luck throws for 59 passes in his return in a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. Pat, your thoughts as a Colts fan?
I think it was a good game. Did you mention Baltimore beating Buffalo 47-3?
Oh, I completely forgot that was a game and not a massacre. You're right. Baltimore absolutely annihilates Buffalo. That's a game we can talk about too.
They let Lamar Jackson get in there. He went 1 for 4,
Holy cow.
yards.
People doubting Flacco. Flacco goes for 236 and 3 touchdowns. I don't think we need to doubt Flacco. Flacco is still Flacco.
He's one of the only quarterbacks this week that didn't throw multiple interceptions.
Yeah, that game was over before it started. And apparently, let's hang on 1 second for the Buffalo game, because apparently this was interesting. The Buffalo Bills had 2 total yards of offense in the first quarter, and not only that, they started Nathan Peterman. Now, if you remember Nathan Peterman, it was because he threw 5 interceptions after they benched Tyrod Taylor last year. He was benched after the first half for Josh Allen. So Josh Allen, the rookie, who is not expected to get his start because he, to be quite frank, wasn't good enough, Josh Allen found his way into that game, and Buffalo just got annihilated by Baltimore. Let's come back to the Colts game, though. Andrew Luck, 53 passes in his return. Holy cow. Pat, as a Colts fan, are you concerned, or what are you thinking about that game?
I think it was a decent game. I'm
Mm-hmm.
optimistic now about the rest of the season. It's his first game back in like a year and a half.
Yes.
Certainly some rust when it comes to real live NFL plays.
Mm-hmm.
But he went 39 of 53. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, he threw the ball a lot, but he completed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
39 out of 53. That's a solid percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Over 300 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns. One to Eric Ebron,
Mm-hmm.
which is our newest addition, tight end,
Mm-hmm.
and T.Y. Hilton, our top tier receiver as it stands right
Yes.
now. He got kind of a slower game, but he did have 5 catches, touchdown. Andrew Luck did throw an interception. We also lost a fumble. I believe Cincinnati had 2 turnovers as well. Andy
Mm-hmm.
Dalton, only 21 for 28, 243, and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Also threw an interception. They ran the ball well.
Mm-hmm.
Running the ball against Indy has always been a thing for any team in the NFL. So that continues. But I noticed, Andrew Luck got sacked for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but he did not get the snot beat out of him like he has the last couple of seasons. So
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to me that we had success in the no huddle offense
Mm-hmm.
with how we got one of our touchdowns to T.Y. Hilton. But when we went no huddle, that's when our offensive line didn't seem to have their bearings under them. So
What?
we had the most trouble when we were rushing down the field. And if we huddled up, called a play, the offensive line was solid. So
Mm-hmm.
it's better than not being solid ever.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and the only thing else I'd want to say about that game is that the Colts rushing to me is interesting. I was under the impression that Marlon Mack was the starter. He does not even appear on the stat sheet. Jordan Wilkins carried the ball 14 times for 40 yards, so just a rough day running the ball for the Colts. And the Colts, the Colts historically have had Edgerrin James. They had Frank Gore. For a bit there. They've not historically had the greatest rushing attack, but man, the Colts running back position, and then they find a way to maybe lessen that on Luck, because man, I don't know, throwing the ball 53 times? Holy cow. And unfortunately, the last throw to Jack Doyle, man, Doyle fumbles the ball, the Bengals take it all the way back, and that's the end of that. So, rough day
Yeah,
for Colts rushing.
Our rushing, Marlon Mack was injured.
Mm-hmm.
He tested his hamstring before the game, but even they said, look, he's going
Okay.
to have to be significantly more improved with his hamstring if he's going to play, and clearly he wasn't. So we're out with an injury there.
Right.
Robert Turbin was supposed to also be one of our top running backs. He got suspended for a few games for a banned substance,
Okay.
4 games. So it's going to be a couple of weeks before we have names anyone has ever heard of. So we had, a couple top draft picks over the last couple of years for us.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of coming off the bench and getting just a couple carries, they got the bulk of the work. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The league is wide open, and then of course, we still have our Monday night game coming up, and then we have tonight a fun one, the Bears with Khalil Mack trying to terrorize Andrew Luck and the Green Bay Packers. That game is the Sunday night game. Looking forward to that.
Hey, Luke, I don't know if you heard.
Yeah.
But rumor mill is that the Colts are primed to be a top contender for Le'Veon Bell.
Really?
So we have $47 million of cap space. We have all of our draft picks for the next few years. We've not traded any of them away.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually, we have the resources at least. It doesn't mean we'll go all out to get them because, like I said earlier, the running back position isn't as crucial as it used to be. Being a top tier running back helps,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not absolutely necessary. James Conner, never heard of him, ran all day long today. So
Accurate.
we'll see what happens. I'm excited to find out though because I wouldn't mind having a big name running back for the first time in years.
Yeah, I don't think that would hurt the Colts at all. In fact, that as a Titans fan would worry me quite a bit. Though it would seem like I have my own things to worry about after my Titans, it appears here, are going to lose to the Dolphins after losing Mariota, one of our key linemen, Taylor Lewan, and now, as I found out, Delaney Walker, our tight end. So Tennessee.
Falling apart.
Tennessee not looking ideal here. Not great in our first game against the Dolphins. And that game about to go final with Miami taking the win there and Tennessee taking the L. So it would appear as though the only team that took the win this week is the Jaguars, which was the other game that we didn't actually talk about. The Jaguars beat the Giants 20-15 today in a game where I believe Leonard Fournette got injured. I think I heard that.
Yes.
If that is the case, that could be bad news for the Jacksonville Jaguars. In fact, their rushing leader was T.J. Yeldon today, 14 carries, 51 yards. So not good news there out of Jacksonville.
Yeah, and for the Giants, they had a solid week rushing the ball at least.
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley, the rookie, he got over 100 yards and a touchdown. So good start. Welcome to the NFL.
Yep.
OBJ just got a huge contract. He had 11 catches for 111 yards. So attaboy, he's earning that money.
Hey, I mean, you don't want to say there were good things in a loss. The Giants still lost that game, but there was definitely a lot of positives for the Giants there. I mean, Jacksonville's still a good team, so you can't sleep on Jacksonville. The question for them is going to be, what do they do without Leonard Fournette going forward, and how serious is that injury? So that's kind of a wrap-up of the week for NFL Week 1. That was a lot because we've seen most of the games played. Let's move then to tennis, the world of tennis, because you noted here Serena Williams blows up at the ref. Pat, you want to share your thoughts on that story?
I mean, she stood her ground, so I'm going to be honest, I don't know all the context for what tipped her off, but a lot of her frustration came from a belief that if this was the men out on the court, that all the things that were happening or that she said would be totally okay and normal. And so there was an insinuation that she was cheating, and the person she was going up against idolized Serena Williams. Met her when she was younger, aspired to be her. Now she got to play her in a final and beat her, and it's now being overshadowed by this instance of insinuation that one of the top female tennis players of all time, probably forever will be, is calling out a ref to say, I don't cheat, I would rather lose. And she did lose, and when the ceremony came around and they were offering up the trophies, the person who won was in tears because she was being booed. And Serena went up to her, put an arm around her, told her, congratulations, you earned this. And she made it right for her, and I think that shows a lot of Serena Williams' character. She was called out, or at least there was an implication that she was cheating. She shut that down real fast, and when the crowd wasn't behind the winner, she was, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I do think that the comparisons to, obviously I think regardless of male, female, you want to encourage sportsmanship. I think Serena had some valid points. It looks like she's been fined $17,000 for her actions, this according to the Telegraph. But obviously you hate to see, I don't think necessarily an official decided this game. You hate to see for the winner not being supported. She won. Difficult time in tennis, in my opinion. And like I said, I don't truly understand the whole story. I understand there's a lot of controversy behind it. It's one of those things. I think that if Serena did handle it in a positive manner, or try to make the best out of the situation and try to support the individual who did win, the woman who did win, I think that's definitely something positive that she could do. And the quote, "I don't cheat, I'd rather lose." That's a pretty strong statement. But Serena Williams has displayed that throughout her entire career. She's been a very strong woman. She's stood her ground on many things. And especially like regarding her pregnancy and stuff like that earlier in her career. It's a very interesting topic, a very interesting story out of the tennis world. And going into maybe less serious news at that same U.S. Open, this is the story of the week in my professional judgment. The chicken strip lady that dipped her chicken strips into her kid's Coke and then ate it at the U.S. Open. Which leads me to the only question I can truly believe is relevant. What is your weird food combo, Pat? Do you have a weird food combo?
I don't have a ton. In fact, I don't always love my food being all over each other. I think the only thing that might be reasonably interesting is I don't mind some hot sauce on my eggs.
Yeah, I'm there
A
with
nice
you.
fried egg or scrambled eggs. Don't mind some hot sauce on there. But other than that, I don't remember anyone ever calling me out for eating something weird.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I don't think I really have any weird food combos necessarily. But the question, I mean, I'll put like ranch dressing on anything, but that's because, ranch dressing is ranch dressing. This lady apparently got a ton of hate for this. Does she deserve the hate? Look, I say, dip your chick strip. Coke is a liquid, is it not? That could be in a way a sauce. If you like it, dip it in the sauce. Why not? Why the hate? Why the hate on this lady?
There's no reason for hate. I think
No reason.
one of our issues with society today is it's just fun to hate on people.
Yeah.
And let people like what they like. Who cares?
Hey, you want to dip your chicken strip? People dip fries in Frosties. How is that so bad? Right? It's a
I do
sweet
that.
and savory combo. What's the deal? Let the lady eat her chicken strips. So that is that is the last sports story we'll wrap up with. Kind of a fun one. We do have some video game news. We're gonna skip over Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves has an expansion next week, just to let you know about that. And then NBA 2K19 has been released, and NBA Live 19, both the new basketball games, essentially the Maddens of the basketball genre in gaming. Apparently, Polygon has some good news for NBA Live 19, which NBA Live 19 is produced by EA, and it's historically gotten a bit more flack. It's been known as maybe not as good of a game as the 2K series. However, I read an article, and I'll post it in the comments. NBA Live 19 getting some props from Polygon and a fairly decent review, which I think to me says some things. I may check the game out. What about you, Pat? Are you going to check out any of those?
I mean, I historically am really, really bad at sports games. I don't know why. I understand the sports. I know how to, play them reasonably in real life, but
Yeah.
Madden, NBA, I'm just bad at them, so I don't typically spend the money. Now, I do have EA access,
Yep.
so when NBA Live 19 becomes free next year, I'll get it.
Sounds about right. I mean, that's probably what I'll do too. I'm not a huge basketball game fan. I play NBA Jam, if you guys remember that game from way back in the day. That's the He's on Fire, that
NFL Blitz.
NFL Blitz. If you bring that back, I would have a ton of fun with that, where you can just go beast mode and go crazy with Blitz
Yep.
and throw Hail Marys and win the game every time. So. But yeah, just something kind of interesting, and it does kind of tie into our topic this week. And the last video game news is that Destiny 2 Forsaken has been released. And this ties into our main topic this week of DLC, which is downloadable content on a game. This is downloadable content for Destiny 2. It is a new part. It adds new things to the story. It adds new enemies. It eliminates one of the biggest and most popular characters of the Destiny franchise. It adds new allies. It adds a new place to explore called the Dreaming City. It's got a lot in it. And I've played a little bit. I've not played through the entire story. I've played some of the new game mode Gambit, which I truly do enjoy. That is a lot of fun. I've gotten to the point where I've gotten one of my new super abilities, which basically lets you shoot lightning out of your hands, basically like a Dragon Ball Z character. It's amazing for the Warlocks. I've always been a Warlock player in this game. Ton of fun. There are a lot of new weapons in this game, and they've mixed the weapons up. So you can now use a sniper rifle as a primary, which you could never do before. They don't really care what you use and where. They do limit that ammo when you play in Crucible, which is kind of fun. Crucible is a player versus player mode. So when you're playing other live people and you're not necessarily just playing the story. They added things like the bows as a new weapon, which, again, I will say I've gotten the bow, or at least the starter bow, and it is a lot of fun. They have a lot of changes to the bounty system, the way you get bounties, the way you get rewards from vendors. Eververse, which is historically kind of hated, I think, in the Destiny universe. It's a way you can kind of buy your way through the game and buy silver. Eververse now has bounties where you can get that, and the bounties reset daily, so you can get a lot of these bounties. Like I said, the new Gambit game mode is a ton of fun. I've really enjoyed my time playing that. And there are lots of new armors and weapons with a new 600 light level cap for the end game, which is much higher than what we were at 400? So a 200 light level jump there. So that's kind of my thought on it. What are your thoughts, Pat? You know, I think you haven't played a ton of it yet, but initial impressions.
Initial impressions, it's finally what we want Destiny to be. I actually last week thought I wouldn't get it, and then during the week when it downloaded, I realized, oh, I already bought it a long time ago. So I am starting to play it. I'm waiting. Basically, I'm only playing the story whenever you're on.
Yeah, same.
I've played a little bit of Gambit before it came out, and I've done a couple of the bounties here and there, and I'm telling you, it feels better. That first story mission was really, really good.
It was.
I hate seeing Cade die because, like you said, he is a fan favorite.
Yep.
I think that's just, I'm worried that was just a cheap and easy way to get a lot of attention.
It's true.
Destiny doesn't have a great track record of being great storytellers, so it kind of just makes me nervous, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But man, did he go out in style? That's for sure.
Yeah. I was listening to there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Dado. Dado does Destiny, and he's a really big YouTuber for Destiny, and he kind of posted his initial thoughts. And that was one of the things he said too, was that, you know, just the cutscenes. The cutscenes in this DLC are exceptional. The way they're sorted out, the way they're done. Cutscenes are just basically where you're not actually playing the game. You're more like watching the game, like a video or a movie. And it's a ton of fun to watch those cutscenes. It really is, and it brings a lot into the story. I mean, you're right. Cade's death kind of has me worried too. I'm like, okay, is this just the gimmick for Destiny, for Bungie to get us back into the game? Because if it is, straight up, at least for me, it worked. Like, I wanted to know what happened. And now I have this enemy that has killed a character that I've played through the entire series with, and I loved. He did a lot of great, funny one-liners, and now all of a sudden, he's gone, and I have to hunt down, and so my motivation is hunt down his killer. And that's, look, real talk from Destiny, that's a lot better story than they've had, in my opinion, in a while. Like, some of their other DLCs, and we'll talk about them here in a bit, maybe, just not the greatest of story. It's like you wanted more, and it's like now all of a sudden you have this maybe compelling reason to, all right, I got to get to the bottom of this. Like, I got to figure this out. You know what I'm saying?
So I agree with that. This is a much more interesting basis to a story. But again, they're not the best storytellers. So unfortunately, there's been a lot of lore. There's been a lot of talk about the darkness, about all these terrible things that exist in the world. And so we kill Cade and fight for revenge. I get it. I like it. I would absolutely avenge Cade.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're missing the point of our existence in this game. We're here to protect the Traveler, to protect the light, to protect it from darkness, which is just a vague, undefined enemy.
Yeah.
That we're like 4 years into the game and still don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm just confused at the direction, and it makes me, again, concerned that they're just being a little cheap to get attention, to get people playing, to get people spending money.
I think that's a very
like you said, it's worked. I'm in. I've bought it. I don't know. I feel like there's room for improvement still when it comes to the story, but this is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, I think so too. And so let's jump in then to a discussion of DLC with our last bit here, with our main kind of focus. DLC, what it is DLC just stands for downloadable content. Downloadable content is something that is an addition to the game. And you see this popping up recently, just in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit before that. But with the rise of internet gaming, with the rise of always on, always connected to the internet, where your games can always be updated, you've seen the rise of DLC. And this can be good, and this can be bad. Simple thing for developers here, I've written down a few things. Why do developers do it? Well, number one, it increases the life cycle of their game. That's basic. If you want, I would look, real talk, between me and you, how much did we play Destiny in the 3 months before this DLC dropped? I will tell you, I had uninstalled it.
Yeah, roughly 0 minutes.
Yeah.
Give or take 0 minutes.
So what the developers are doing, at least Bungie here, is rejuvenating, giving life back to their game, getting their player base back. You're giving them more, which on the surface isn't a bad thing. You want people to keep playing your game. It also allows developers to make a lot more money in many ways, because you put out an initial release $60 game and you have plans for $40 DLCs down the road. Maybe you've got plans for $3 $40 DLCs. If that's the case, then not only are players buying into your initial $60 investment, if they keep playing it and if they love the game initially, then they're buying into, in theory, $120 down the road. So essentially, the player base would have, if they really want to truly grasp everything in this game, shelled out essentially $180 by the end game. So it's making developers a lot more money, and people keep buying it. If people keep buying the game and buying the DLC, that can be tricky. And that's where we are with Destiny, I think, in a lot of ways. It's hard. Because Destiny 2 did not hit home. It did not hit where we wanted it. In fact, it felt like DLC for Destiny 1. It felt like we could have just added all this to the first Destiny and we would have been fine. But instead, it was just a not polished game. It left us wanting more. And then for me, I've kept coming back. I bought the Red Legion DLC, which was fun. It had a good story. And I bought Forsaken. And it's like, okay, I keep wanting more. And so I keep buying more. Because I want to know the whole story. I want to know the entire narrative of the game, which is where, that's where developers are making their money off it. So for them, it makes sense. Rather than going into development of a whole new game, a whole new thing, they can just add existing content to what they already have.
Yeah, I get, a lot of the benefits of DLC. I get stuck on the fact that I'm just a cynical person when it comes to business, because I always feel like cash is the only reason the decision is made. And so with DLC, what I feel like is, instead of spending the time to create a great game that people want to play without spending extra,
right?
They're getting you into it. They're getting you kind of interested and excited. And they're like, hey, give me some more money. Let's do this again. And I just feel like, I feel like I'm getting ripped off a little bit. I feel like you could have given me the whole game, but you instead broke it up so you could get $100 out of me instead of 60.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the business aspect of it. What I think people really need to keep in mind too is, what is included up front. Mm-hmm. So, a certain game, Destiny 2, if a lot is included up front and you spend hours and hours and hours, and they're like, hey, I have some new stuff for you if you want, I'll say, great. Bring it on, because I've enjoyed this so much. I'm happy to spend a little more to get more.
Right.
But I like that I'm seeing some developers take a stand on this. So I believe what came out recently was Anthem, a new game that you're excited for.
Yes.
Produced by BioWare.
Mm-hmm.
And they have stood firm, I believe, in saying that this is a complete game.
Right.
We're selling it. It's done. Like, this is the game.
Mm-hmm.
If they have DLCs, BioWare, their other DLCs for games have been just additional stories.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things that aren't necessary, but fun if you enjoy it. So, I played Dragon Age Inquisition. Mm-hmm. They have 2 main DLCs. They're just a couple short storylines that are interesting if you want to play them, but totally unnecessary to play the game itself as it exists.
Right. Yeah, and I think that is a really interesting point. I think that is something, at least for Anthem, going back to that topic, that is something that's kind of a shakeup in the industry. Anthem saying, and BioWare saying, look, we're giving you the complete game. Any kind of story DLC will be free. We're not going to lock this behind paywalls. All the story is going to be there. And it's only going to be, I would assume, multiplayer or, smaller additions that will be the DLC if they have it. I think that's an interesting thing for BioWare to do. It's a risk because DLC is kind of the norm. And it's not just big games that do it, small games do it too. You can, any mobile game, if they put something behind a paywall, in a way that's, hey, buy this extra content and you can see more. Or, hey, it's a little different than DLC, but hey, if you spend $2, we'll give you all your energy back and you can keep playing. That's a little bit different than DLC, but it's the same kind of concept. It gets you to keep playing. I don't know how I feel. Obviously, that's pretty crappy. I mean, I don't think you'd want to do that to your player base. But it does get many people to keep doing it. And I think for me, DLC in that way, until consumers stand up and say, hey, enough is enough. Until we stop, until me as a consumer says, look, Forsaken, I'm not buying it because I feel like I've been wronged before, I'm not doing it. Until consumers do that, I think companies and gaming companies, have no reason to not keep doing DLC. And there are good DLCs. Kotaku has a great article on the 10 best game expansions. And again, I'll link that in the description. For me, a good DLC is something that adds to the game. So you mentioned like something you enjoy doing, you keep playing, you want more of it.
So you felt like you were satisfied, you had not been ripped off, you hadn't been taken advantage of,
right?
But they offered you more and you took it. You're like, yes, please, this is a great game.
Yeah.
What I don't like is like Destiny's DLC. Unfortunately, I love the game, so it makes me overlook it, which is the worst way to handle it. But I just feel like they're putting out unfinished, unpolished products and then fixing it later, promising you everything you've ever wanted, as long as you give me a little more money.
Yeah.
And, it's just a different feeling. If I loved the game, if I was passionate about it, if I played it all the time, that's a lot different than, and I also, question for Destiny in particular, since it's a very popular game at the moment, why did they even do Destiny 2? So when you make DLC, you don't have the same risk of losing your player base. But if you make a whole new game, now not only have you locked some players behind a paywall, but it's technically a completely different game.
Yes.
And so, like things like Fortnite. Fortnite gets updated every week.
All the time.
But they haven't made a Fortnite 2 because if they do, a lot of people wouldn't download the second one. Maybe it's just out of laziness. Maybe they weren't 100% into it, so they're like, I don't want to play the next one. But if you keep giving them a little bit, then they do keep playing. And so that one was an interesting decision for me, and I don't like how they've gone through the same model of unfinished, unpolished story and mechanics to a couple expansions to add some story and content, raids, etc., to then big expansion to fix all the problems. And there's still another season pass for Destiny 2.
Yeah.
So this Forsaken DLC is not even complete in itself.
Yeah, you're completely right in regards to Destiny. And that's... Destiny, I don't believe they've done DLC well. In fact, what Destiny has not done well is, for instance, the Taken King DLC. The Taken King DLC essentially barred people from playing many parts of the game unless they bought the DLC. The example that I will give is the Nightfall Strike. So the Nightfall Strike is a very high-level strike. It's a difficult thing to do. You usually have to have 3 players to do it. And so if you didn't buy the Taken King DLC because one of the new strikes was in the rotation for the Nightfall, now all of a sudden you are locked out of that content for Destiny. Okay, that is not going to be the greatest thing. I think in some ways they've fixed that. And like I was telling, I think I mentioned it in last week's podcast. If you're going to get into Destiny, now is the best time. Because, look, where I have invested, $100 into this game now, I think about that much. You could own it for $60, and you could own all the previous content for $60. That's not a bad deal. if you're willing to do that. However, you're not going to find many people that are going to be willing to go back and do vanilla Destiny and to do the first couple expansions with you. You're not going to find that. You're going to find people right now, if you jump into Destiny, you're going to find people that want to do the new in-game content, that want to do the Forsaken DLC, because that's the reason they came back to the game. So DLC that is small, takes away players' ability to do things. That, in my judgment, is not good DLC. Things that lock them behind a paywall, that is not good DLC. Small, there's always the standing joke of like the Elder Scrolls. I think it was Oblivion and the horse armor, where you could pay like $2.50 to get the horse armor.
Cosmetic.
Yeah, cosmetic. That didn't really change the game. That was always kind of that. I think that was the first real joke. Unfortunately, it was the really we're paying $2.50 for something that doesn't change the game and just makes our horse look different. Like, that was the one that I think really started people questioning DLC. I think it's tough because I think you can see why DLC can be good if you can get a game where you really add to the story. But then again, I think then the response to that is, why isn't that in the story in the first place? Why didn't we just include that? The simple fact is that I think, unfortunately, that's the way and the landscape of the gaming world now, because we're always connected to the internet, because you can always update. You couldn't update your 360 game. You couldn't, or I'm sorry, not your 360. You couldn't update your what am I thinking here? Your Nintendo 64 game. You can't update that cartridge. You can't take Mario 64 and say, oh, here's a new DLC for Mario 64. You couldn't do that at the time. That's not something you could do on the Super NES. When games came out previously, they had to be a finished product or people wouldn't buy them and developers wouldn't sell anything. Now developers are seeing, hey, I can sell you this content, promise you things, and if you believe it, then fine. I think companies that pay up to that promise, or companies that own that promise, are great. Companies that or the game doesn't hit, then it's a shot in the dark in my judgment. And that's tough.
Yeah, I think a lot of DLC should be used for today.
Yeah,
is as long as you get what you feel like is appropriate value from the base game. Right. So if you feel like you got your money's worth with the base game, then DLC is fine. And
sure.
If it doesn't lock you out of certain activities, even better.
Mm-hmm.
So with Skyrim today, it has DLC just like The Witcher does.
Right.
They are unnecessary. They are just because people love the game.
Mm-hmm.
Bethesda is also a company that doesn't get to put out a game every year. And so DLC to them is one way of maintaining some revenue in between major releases.
Right.
And it's not easy to just throw together these giant world RPG games. And so you got to realize the business side of it a little bit, in that, especially for a company like BioWare or Bethesda, who don't put games out every year like Call of Duty, like Destiny, anything Activision or EA, who get to put out games all the time.
Assassin's Creed.
DLC is a way for you to survive until your next big game in some cases.
Yeah.
And as long as you feel like you got good value out of the base game, then great. They made something more for you because you love the game. And if you want it, great. If not, great. But it's there if you want it.
Yeah, and I think there are other games that do that exceptionally well as well. Fallout 4 is one that comes to mind, with the Far Harbor DLC and the Nuka World DLC. Those were, like you said, look, you didn't have them, fine. You could still play the base game. You had them, cool. Then they're adding more content. So you like the base game? Sweet. You want more content? Buy it. You don't like the base game? Cut your losses and try to find the next game, right? Same thing with the Borderlands series. Borderlands series has done an exceptional job with that as well. But I don't think DLC is going anywhere. I think Anthem taking a stand on DLC is interesting. I think BioWare taking a stand and saying, look, you're getting a complete game. Where any story-based DLC, anything else we think of about the story and the lore, we're going to give to you for free. I think that's powerful. I think we'll have to see how it plays out. And again, will it hold true? My hope would be yes, but until I see it actually delivered, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the approach they're taking from a business perspective is, they'll get people to spend the money up
Mm-hmm.
front. They'll get a few extra people to do it. And they have to budget their money like anyone does. So if you win the lottery, you get a large lump sum of cash.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to work ever again, that's fine. You have that lump sum of cash. You have to plan the rest of your life around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Anthem is doing is saying, I'm going to take a giant lump sum of cash because I promise people free additional content. So I'm going to get 10% extra people to buy the game.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to use that to survive until their next game.
Yeah.
So they're gambling. They're gambling in the fact that people are in ways annoyed by DLC
Mm-hmm.
and annoyed specifically probably by Destiny DLC because Anthem is a similar style game.
It is.
And they're saying, hey, come on over here. Our stuff's going to be free because we're going to take care of you because you gave me $60 to play the game in the first place.
Yeah. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that plays out. And I think it is, like I said, I think it's good that a developer is kind of taking a stand on this and saying, hey, this is the way it is. But also, like I said, I'm not somebody who's in the camp of all DLC is inherently equal. Or all DLC is inherently evil, maybe more to say. I think that if done correctly, if done in a way that doesn't harm the consumer, and like you said, if it really adds meaningful things to the game without taking away the base game and it isn't required for completion of the base game, I think to me it's additional stuff. It's like, hey, that's awesome. You wanted more Fallout 4, here's Far Harbor. Here's something great that we thought of as an addition that could be really cool. We didn't bundle it with the base, which again, though, I think the naysayers would say, well, why wasn't it just bundled with the base in the beginning? And my only response to that is to increase the life cycle of the game. To get people coming back to Fallout 4, you release Fallout Far Harbor later, and that'll get your player base back. Because if they liked it, they'll come back. That's just business. You want people playing your game. I mean, you don't want people to zone out and go play Fortnite, You want them to stay with what you're doing.
Right.
So it's a tricky one. I don't think DLC is going anywhere anytime soon, but it's a debate that, man, it's going to go on for a while. So I'd be interested to see in the comments or from people what our thoughts are on DLC. So, Pat, any final thoughts about that?
I mean, my only final thought is you made a good point earlier in the fact that as long as people keep paying for this stuff, it's not going away.
Right.
You can be as mad and upset about it and frustrated about it as you want.
Yeah.
Until you stop spending the money on it,
Mm-hmm.
and not just you. We're going to need a lot of people
Yeah.
to stop spending the money on it. It's just going to keep happening because what CEO of any company is going to be like, wait, they're going to give us money for stuff we could have given them earlier?
Yep.
Great, keep doing that. My bonus structure appreciates that.
Absolutely.
But, it's the same thing's going on with pre-orders. Every time a game comes out for pre-order, I see people get online saying, hey, don't forget, we're not buying it. We're not spending the money on it, blah, blah, blah. And people do. And if you pre-order early enough, sometimes you get beta access or additional content in-game. So there's just a lot of different things. But until people stop spending the money, it's going to keep happening.
You are, with pre-orders, you are opening up a whole nother can of worms that we will talk about on another podcast. You just gave me a whole new idea because pre-orders, that's a whole nother story, isn't it? But it very closely related to DLCs. And heck, some DLCs even have pre-orders. It's crazy. And in some ways, if you buy a season pass for a DLC, that is a pre-order for a game for content you're not going to get for 6 months anyway. It's interesting. And so pre-orders are something we'll definitely hit on this podcast in a future episode too. But I think this was a really good discussion of DLCs. And so I think to close this up, to wrap this up, I think we've had a great conversation about DLCs, the NFL, Serena Williams, chicken strips in Coca-Cola. So much going on right now in the world. Next week, we want to talk about the resurgence of board games. So we'll shift from the digital gaming world into board games, because all I've seen and heard lately is the resurgence of board games, and it's spearheaded by quite possibly our favorite generation to blame for everything, the millennials. So
Why not?
yeah, exactly. Why not? So we'll talk next week about the resurgence of board games. Why did this happen? Why are people suddenly gravitating to board games again, which they definitely are? And will it continue? What are the merits to board games? How do they impact our social interactions with others? And how do they impact the way we think and play games? D&D has made a huge resurgence in the last few years. And that, to me, brings the question, is it cool? And what makes it cool if it is cool again? Or was it ever not cool? What has brought this into the more mainstream? Just like video games video games arguably are now mainstream. What has brought board games back into the mainstream spotlight where people are actually starting Kickstarters to develop new board games, which is an interesting thing.
No, I'm excited to talk about that topic. I have started playing some board games in the last few years that I've literally never played in my life. So I'm interested. I'm excited to talk about it.
I think it will be a great podcast next week. Pat, final thoughts for this week?
No, just have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Don't forget we're on Facebook, Twitter, PNLIRL, and PLIRL1 on Twitter. So come chat with us. Come interact with us. Let us know what you want us to talk about.
Yes, definitely. And thanks again, Pat, for the great conversations. And we look forward to seeing you all on episode 9 of PNL IRL. See you next time.